if you had a time machine and you could only use it once, what would you do?
I would probably want to see the Permian.
The Permian? What's that?
The era that you still had trilobites. It was before the Permian extinction, and when the largest predator in North America was Dimetrodon.
Oh, fuck, you'd go all the way there. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Wrecking Crew Comedy Podcast. We've got a special guest for you today. He is the Texas State Director of the American Atheist, host of the Raw Man Podcast, a public speaker, video producer, blogger, vlogger. He is the man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour. He is the reflection of perfection, the number one selection. He is the woman's pet and the man's regret. What you see is what you get, and what you don't see is better yet. He is the Ayatollah of rock and rolla. Folks, I call him the God Killer, but all of you guys call him Aron Ra. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Aron Ra.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction.
Can you tell I worked on it? Thank you so much. I know that we just had sound issues. This is, I guess, take 3. The sound was screwed up, but I know you're super busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to ask you just a few things, and then you can say yes, no, please don't ask me that, please go away, I hate you, stuff like that. You know, when you were talking to, a Matt Slick or a Ray Comfort, did you ever physically want to hit them?
Well, I'll say that there is a fantasy in the back of my head for that sort of thing, but that's as far as it goes. Because
I don't know, because you must be well over 6'3", and you look.
I'm not. I'm like 6'1".
Oh well, I'm Italian, so anything over 5 feet is like the CN Tower to me. So I remember watching it and getting myself angry, and I'm thinking, how does he remain calm, cool, and not want to punch this guy in the head? And I guess that makes you not a bigger man, but I guess you've dealt with this before. You know how to deal with people, and it would make you look foolish if you were to stoop to their level.
Yes, you're correct about that. The most frustrating thing in both of those cases that you just brought up is having to redefine or having to define what faith is.
Yes.
After they've redefined it. Now, in any other example, I mean, when theologians criticize what they call evolutionists, they very often say, well, you don't have any evidence, so you believe it on faith. Well, how come they're using that correct definition when they want to berate me? They're ignoring the evidence that I actually do have, but by asserting that I believe without evidence, and then they're telling me that that's faith, they readily admit that faith is a belief that is not based on evidence when it is being used as an insult against me.
Right.
But when I turn around and say, when I use it against them, well, then faith is just a synonym of trust, and it doesn't mean that at all. And they always have to deny this. So why they have this huge double standard where faith only means what it really means when they use it against me, and it means something completely different when I use it against them, and the goalposts have to constantly move. There always has to be this illusion that they have to conjure somehow.
Yeah, and that's the thing where, as a viewer, and I mean, I believed in God maybe 5 years ago, and the reason I stopped was the Christopher Hitchens, and you were one of the main people too, where I'd watch stuff online and you would debate or talk to people, and anyone that's listening, please go check it out. I mean, you have a series of, everything from the 10 Commandments, why is faith wrong, give the devil his due, and what I enjoy is watching you speak, hearing you speak, and seeing the I know you hate the word confidence, but you know your stuff, and if you don't if I don't agree with you, I could easily look up your stuff and see if you're lying or not. You know, it's just called study. Go to a library, look at the stuff. And what bothers me is when you deal with these people and they don't do that. They just say, no, it's because God said so. Because God said so. Because God said so.
Yeah.
And it's very...
They're not talking about what God said. They're talking about what the men who wrote the Bible said.
Yes, exactly. And that was my final straw. I remember I went to a church, and it was a Baptist church, and I said to them, whoever wrote the Bible was no fool, right? And he said, yeah. And I thought Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then I remember seeing your talk, and you were saying, nobody knows who wrote this. Nobody knows who wrote this. This was all, it was probably Greeks that wrote it. They were paid to write it. And I remember seeing that going, he's lying. There's no way. And you and Hitchens would germinate inside of my head, and I guarantee you in other people's heads. And you would just sit there and think, he cannot. It's like you'd sit there and you don't want to believe what they're saying, but if it haunts you enough, you realize, no, it does make sense what they're saying, and you're in that denial stage of, no, they're evil. No, they're evil. And you really do. You tell yourself they're evil. Don't believe that. Don't believe that. They're evil. And then all of a sudden you have to believe it because it's the logical truth. It's just logic, guys. And it's reality. I mean, one of my favorite things in the whole world is going to the ROM, the Toronto, Ontario Museum, and walking around. I might be a little stoned, but I enjoy walking around looking at the dinosaurs. And the thing that always bothered me when I was little, the school, it was a Catholic school I went. They took me to look at the dinosaurs, and of course, my favorite was the T-Rex. And the very first time I saw a T-Rex, I remember looking at its teeth, and I said to my teacher, I said, so were they around when man was around? And she said, and she looked over at the other teacher, and they both kind of looked at each other like saying, why are you asking this? And finally somebody that worked there said, no, they weren't around, they weren't around when humans were around. And I said, well, who made this thing? And the teacher said, God made it. And I thought, okay, so God made this Tyrannosaurus Rex. Why would he make something so incredibly scary? And then she goes, oh, well, it was his pet. And then I said, are we God's pets? Because that's the only thing that I came up with, is because he destroyed all of these dinosaurs. So why would you destroy? I mean, I you look at a T-Rex and you think, man, if I was a kid and I could make anything, I'd probably make a T-Rex. But, if I was bored, why would I kill them all? I felt like, are we an experiment? Well, what are you talking? That's what I felt like.
When man creates anything for any of our fictional stories, even when it's supposed to be a realistic animal, I mean, every animal we've ever invented for any kind of a movie or fable or myth, they always come out something that violates taxonomy. I mean, look at the aliens from... Well, actually, the aliens are not a good example because they were supposed to be something different than the evolution of anything on Earth. So look at anything that was supposed to have involved on Earth. Godzilla is a good example. We have a reptile that has an external nose and external ears. These violate taxonomy altogether. And then we have, of course, the centaurs and Pegasus, where we have six-limbed vertebrates. How come there are no six-limbed vertebrates? I mean, if God can make whatever he wants, well, we could have an eight-legged rhinoceros, right? I mean, if we've got six-legged insects, how come we don't have four-legged insects and six-legged horses?
Right.
How come that never happens? I mean, how come we don't have any mammals with feathers? Why does feathers only show up on birds the way you would expect if it's going to be an evolutionary ancestry, but they never show up on mammals?
Well, I've got a good answer for you. Have you ever gone to Chernobyl?
Not yet.
Okay, that's the only way that's going to happen, that's the only, like, I remember you talking to, I think it was Bob Dutko, or it was somebody, and they kept bringing up, dinosaurs and how they found fossils, and, men and dinosaurs were together, and I'm thinking, holy fuck, the last thing I'd want to walk around is, hey, we're hunting dinosaur today, guys. No, hey, get on, this is not the Flintstones. Like, there is no way man and dinosaur coexisted. And I always thought, who believes this? I remember the guy you were talking to kept saying, no, Mr. Aron Ra, you're totally wrong. There are fossils, there are blah, blah, blah. And I kept thinking, where are you getting this shit from?
Bob Dutko was an interesting interview. Remember when I asked him for the best example that he could give, the one that he knew that we could verify for sure, that his listeners would be able to go look it up online and verify that he was correct about the evidence of dinosaurs existing with people? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember what the example was that he provided? It was a series of swords that bore perfect illustrations of sauropods on them.
Right.
And these were Hebrews that had visited the United States in like 2,000 years ago somehow. And I guess maybe he was taking the Mormon stint on it, where there were, somehow the Jews had come to North America and they bring all these swords. However, when you look it up, the swords turned out to be lead, as if nobody would make a sword out of lead. They were hardly artifacts. They were made in modern times and inserted into a hole that had already been dug.
Right.
Then buried. And they were meant to be discovered. So they put it as a hoax. It's well known a hoax. The Hebrew inscriptions that were all over the swords were copied verbatim from a textbook on learning Hebrew. And so this was something that has been known to have been a fraud since 1926. And this was Bob Dutko's best example, the one that he knew that was true.
Right. And the thing that I found weird about that was, if I'm bringing evidence like that to you and you're showing me that that's totally wrong, I would kind of be embarrassed about that. I really would. I'd feel like a jackass. I would just say, well, you actually told him where to look these things up, and he didn't. It's kind of, you have that famous saying of, I believe because I believe because I believe because I believe. And you could say that all you want, you're kind of brainwashing yourself.
It is very much a matter of religion is literal.
Sorry, folks, we just stopped it for a second. Sye Ten Bruggencate ran downstairs and raped me. It was awful. And he kept saying to me, how do I know that? How do I know that? How do I know that you're raping me? And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. I'm like, Sye, you're raping me. You're raping me. So we're back to Bob Dutko, Sye Ten, or any of these people. It just seems like their whole game is not to have a discussion with you. They know that they're wrong. They just want to get you frustrated. I mean, yeah. The whole thing with them is they purposely want you to make you angry. There is no discussion. I saw a video of Sye Ten talking about how his game was not to have a discussion. It was so like he even admitted, like, when you sit there and say, hey, just get in my shoes for a minute, and I couldn't even get in your shoes. Like, I wouldn't even dare. It's kind of like I wouldn't even think of, it's kind of like you saying, my car, picture driving in my car. How about this? Don't even picture driving my car. Here's the keys to my car. Take it for a cruise. And I say, no, I won't. I will not. I will not take, no, I will not. And you're like, no, you'll understand once you take my car for a little cruise. You'll understand what I'm talking about, the engine. You'll understand about the power it's got. Just take the car for a cruise. And I just keep saying, nope. that gets you nowhere. You look stupid. And one of my favorite, I mean, whenever I want to get angry, I'll listen to you talking to Sye when David Smalley and you were talking, and he didn't answer one question, and I just thought, is he crazy? Or he had this, he thinks you're the devil, but do you ever look at his face and he's just got this demonic grin on his face, like he knows that he's an idiot, but which insults me, because as an idiot, you should never try and be smarter than an idiot. So he was very, it was weird, and he just kept saying, okay, how do you know that? Or, okay, first, like you would ask him something, then all of a sudden he'd say, okay, let me answer that, but first you need to answer this, which would go into another question, which would go into another question, would go into another question, and you would never get back to the original question. And as a viewer, it was so frustrating to sit there and go, why doesn't he just answer one fucking question? Just one, And he was...
Are you running for office?
it was brutal. And I'm thinking, here's a guy that figured out a great way to get out of work, Yes. He did. He really did. I mean, he worked at a factory. He knew it was shit. I think he enjoys, everybody likes a good villain. He knows he's the villain. And people see him as their, if you believe in, I don't know how you would want, I mean, I look at people like you or Dawkins, when I sit there and I go, would I follow these people into battle? I would, because the way you speak and the way you're saying the truth, and you're not trying to lie or you're trying to mislead. You do nothing of that. You try and clarify and make it as simple as possible. And that, I could follow that. But if I look at a Sye or a Ray Comfort or a Matt Slick, I sit there and I think these guys they're liars. They're talking about truth, but meanwhile, they're talking out of their asses.
Yes, and there has to be some kind of a word game.
Yes.
They have to practice the word game. It can't ever be straight on the data.
Yes, and that I find terrifying. I noticed today I was watching the Matt Slick and debate you did, and it was horrendous. You started off very polite, and you were trying to be, you brought up Godzilla, and he pretended he didn't know what Godzilla was, or James Bond. He would pretend he didn't know what these, I mean, you just turn on the fucking TV. I mean, he would pretend that he didn't know what you were talking about. He would play these word games, and he was trying his best to just make you angry. He would purposely mispronounce your name. He would just do everything in his power to get you angry, which I thought is so dishonest. I thought that, like, here's a guy that supposedly you're supposed to talk about God and how loving he is and how forgiving, and you're the only one doing that. Not, it's like the bad guy's the good guy, and the good guy's evil.
Yes.
That to me is what I got out of it the first time I watched it. I thought the one that's supposedly the dark one, the Satan, is actually the one telling the truth here.
Well, that's going along with the Bible, isn't it? I mean, remember, who's the only person in Genesis 1 through 6 who told the truth?
The devil.
Well, it's not the devil.
I'm sorry.
The snake.
The snake. Yeah. But wasn't the snake? Wasn't the snake the devil?
Nowhere does the Bible imply that. That is an interpretation read between the lines while they ignore the lines.
And that's what freaks me out, that I love listening to you. You know more about the Bible than they do. And that's what I think, that's why so many people enjoy, your talks, the work, the videos that you do, because you know more than the person that says he goes to church every Sunday, which is terrifying. I've seen you have a talk with preachers or people on the street, and it's the funniest thing in the world, because they actually think you don't know what you're talking about, and then when they engage with you, they realize, oh shit, this guy knows. It's like watching Columbo. You know, it's like you ever see the bad guy in Columbo who thinks he's so smart, he's so much smarter than Columbo, and then he realizes that Columbo's the smartest fucking guy in the room, and and it's too late for him. He can't get away. Now he's screwed, and they got that look of panic on their face, which I love. Where you give them the challenge, and they're terrified to take the challenge, and I relish that. And to me, that's, the work that you do. You may not feel it, but a lot of people love it. They really do. I remember when I was a kid, people would, if you were an atheist, they would, you'd kind of look like, oh, God is the devil. And now more and more people, I believe it attributes to you too. And a Seth Andrews and a Matt Delonte, where you look at these guys and you just say, these are, nice guys. Well, Matt seems angry, but these are nice guys that, in their hearts are really trying to open people's eyes. And that means a lot to people. You're not trying to milk them for money. You're not trying to lie to them, or you tell them the truth. You tell them the way it is. And if you're wrong, you admit you're wrong. And you learn something from it. And that's what I love about you guys. You guys, you remind me of this. Clint Eastwood kind of person that just, he's that gunslinger that he's just a bit quicker than you. You might be fast, but he's just that split second faster than you. And he could ride a horse just a little better than you can, and he could get out of trouble, and he could outthink you. And I noticed that when you would take on a Matt Slick or a Ray Comfort, they realize that they're not going to beat you with their brains. They're going to beat you with their rudeness. By the only way I'm going to beat this guy is just be an asshole and make him angry, because that's the only way I could save face, because people will only remember the last, 3 minutes of the conversation. They'll realize that we're yelling at each other, and they'll walk away. Instead of looking at what took place, they'll walk away saying, oh, they just argued. And that's so sad. And I think that's where you try so hard to call them out on their bullshit, and they always fall flat on their face. I think what, a lot of people stick up for Matt Slick and say that, the only reason I would stick up for Matt Slick is I realized that his son had passed away, and I have a son, and that would crush me, and I would do everything in my power. I think I would tell my brain that there is a God just so I could see my son again. But
I've encountered people who were like that.
Yes, and I do not, but the more I watch him, the more I think, is that one of the reasons why he behaves the way he does? Like, because if, you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's why he behaves the way he does? Because, sometimes he just behaves like a fucking child,
That was a very frustrating conversation, and as I said, the biggest problem with it was going back and having to, set the definition straight.
Well,
he knows full well what the definition is.
Right.
He gives me his quote of Jesus talking to Thomas, right? And stops short of the line that I gave, which was the very next line, which gives the definition of faith.
Right.
So don't tell me he doesn't know what that next line is.
I've seen videos of him where he says when he was a child, he would listen in on conversations, and he would try and pick up what the adults were saying and how, two men would argue or have a discussion. And to me, it's kind of a P.T. Barnum kind of way of dealing with people. How do I learn to make people into suckers? That like, if that's what you're trying to get out of a conversation, if I'm listening in to adults when I was little, I was, happy that I'm actually, not in my room, but I would listen to the conversation, but I would never try and ooh, let me try and here, let me write this down here. How do I how do I get out of an argument? To me, it's bait with these people, which they don't win, but it's kind of like it's very frustrating because the game that they're up to. The first couple of times you watch it, you think, maybe they maybe they do have a point, but that quickly goes away after you realize the game that they're playing. You grant them that that Joker card just one time, but after that, you just go, "You're so full of shit," You've got
to understand what their goal is. See, science is the purpose of science is to improve understanding, and the only way to improve understanding is to seek out the flaws in your current perspective and then correct them. Right? But with the goal of religion is not about understanding. Truth and accuracy and accountability are all completely irrelevant. It's all about believing something and believing it hard enough and being completely convinced. And so you have to sell yourself on the conviction. And so you have to talk like you're convinced. The way that I talk to believers is not the way that I would talk to scientists. If I'm talking to scientists, I will be as tentative as possible, because this is something where we have to expect that there's going to be a flaw in our perspective somewhere, and we have to accept that there must be a flaw in our perspective somewhere, and we should find it. And this is an investigation, but that's not the religious perspective. And so the religious perspective, having no evidence at all on their side, want to put huge demands on evidence on our side, and then say that because scientists use things like evidence indicates instead of asserting what actually is or absolutely is, that they think that there's some uncertainty, as if uncertainty means wrong.
Right.
As if if they're evaluating or examining some detail of the distant past in paleontology or whatever, there's going to be evidence that implies that this range of figures or this probably was the result. This would be the best explanation we can come up with at the moment. That's why we would call it probable, that there's a probability that indicates that. But these sound uncertain to believers, and believers are all about conviction. Well, so they hear somebody who sounds completely competent,
right,
even if they're talking out of their ass, which is what you usually get. And this is why Josh Fierstein is so much more famous than I am.
Well, I think I think he knows the game to play. B is this, I think Sye, he plays the Sye Ten Bruggencate of be as outrageous and as annoying, as stupid as possible. Say some of the stupidest things. I mean, you were there when Sye said when he said God knows your life. How did he word it again? David Smalley said it to him in the interview. He said, him and the other con artist, Eric, were there. And he said to Sye, so God has predestined your life. And Sye said, yes. And then Smalley said, okay, well then, do you have free will? And he said, he contradicted himself by saying yes. I mean, it was like the dumbest thing, and the whole crowd just thought, you are the dumbest fucking guy on the planet. Even Eric Hovind, moved away from him. No, I think he moved forward to say, shut the fuck up. Stop speaking. I mean, it was embarrassing. And I really wish that, there are times I'm sitting there going, I wish he got one thing right, just maybe one thing. And he plays this game of, the same thing with the guy you were talking about. Make them angry, say the most outrageous, stupidest things out there, and the money will come.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And you have a lot of people that have huge YouTube channels out of that strategy.
Yeah, and that's all it is. It's just say the most stupidest, ignorant things. I mean, if I were to yell out, I believe all faggots should die, I really do. I think, even though, and I guarantee he doesn't even believe that. He just says stuff like that just to get clicks, views, get on the news. You know how it works. Once you get on the news, somebody else wants to interview you, then this person wants to interview you. It's this game he's playing. I don't think any of these guys believe, I believe it's the Peter Popoff syndrome. There's a buck to be made here. And I'm going to, it's a great way to get out of work. I just talk out of my ass and act like an idiot. And
Yep.
and that's it. I mean, if I were to talk to you, the problem is people that are hurting, that are dying, that are suffering, they have that, they want to believe, and I think we all have that, there's that fear of...
Even I would not go to, some little old lady
Yes.
who's believed this all her life.
Yes.
And she's going to die soon. And she says to me, say maybe I'm a caretaker or something, in her proximity, taking care of her needs in her last few hours or whatever. She
Right.
says something along the lines of, at least she'll be in heaven soon.
Right.
Nobody is going to deprive her of her precious illusion under circumstances like that.
Right.
Now, if she's fully healthy and she's standing in a classroom spouting that nonsense to kids, it's on.
Right. But here's the thing that I absolutely love is that you grant that, and you would not take a buck offer. You would not say, "Give me your money and I'll feed you this bullshit." You being you being the atheist, the immoral monster that you are, you would care for her and tell, you wouldn't take her money. You would tell her that you need a hug, but Fairstein and all these guys would say, yes, you're going to be in heaven, you're going to see your kids, you're going to, you don't sit there and make up this bullshit about everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine, you're going to be in heaven, and you're the mean one. You're the one, the bad one, which I find absolutely sickening in the world today. I mean, comedy's comedy, but some of this stuff is so sick. You couldn't write this stuff. I mean, if I were to ever write a disgusting character, I would write about a Sye Ten. And if I wrote about a Sye Ten, people would think it was fiction. Honestly, they would. They would say, nobody is that stupid or mean, And I'd be like, no, there really is. Until, I showed my friends about this Sye Ten guy, and they just thought either he was mentally disturbed or just a mean, sick person,
If you were going to write a movie about somebody with a narcissistic personality disorder, somebody that is completely full of themselves to the point that they can't even envision them being in error about anything. If you were to write that movie and you basically just write about Trump or Ben Carson right now, and then take that manuscript back 5 or 10 years with a different name on it.
Right, and they would say you're writing about Hitler.
Well,
we've heard this story before. You're talking about Adolf, and if I remember when Sye Ten said he said that one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard another human being say that. He said, I remember Matt Delahanty said, what about the there was a tribe out in the middle of nowhere, and he said, it was kind of, they will believe in God, kind of like that, like kind of God will show them, I do not believe that they don't believe in God, they believe in God just like you do, Aaron. Aron. You know that. I just found that disgusting. To say I know what goes in your head.
His arguments from how God has revealed these things to him through Scripture. The argument that I had against Sye Ten, of course, was using Sir Isaac Newton, who made the exact same claim.
Right. That's
for
right.
the exact same reason, but it was to promote the idea that Jesus was not divine. That was Newton's position. So how can Sye Ten say that that Jesus is divine and Isaac Newton doesn't agree, and yet both of them are claiming to have direct revelation from God through Scripture, and this is how they know what they know what they know.
Yes, and that's the thing that I never understood, because I would sit there and go, I am nowhere near the brain function of an Isaac Newton, let alone my pet cat. I and when you turn that on him, that was beautiful. That was so poetic, and I just thought to myself, yeah, he got you. He absolutely got you. And of course, Sye Ten pretends he's smart and smug, and I think he knows he's in a corner, and he plays that card of just being a jackass, and people buy it. But yeah, you totally, I mean, that whole conversation was absolutely, it was like watching Joe Frazier beat the shit out of a mentally challenged turtle. It was absolutely horrendous to watch. And, if I'm feeling down, I'll watch it because it kind of makes me feel, it's kind of, if I ever think of ideas, or if I want to get angry, or I want to get in a mood, if I'm tired, I'll put it on, and it'll wake me right up, because I just think I couldn't deal being in the same room with this person. I don't know how you did it. And that probably came down to experience of knowing that I know the game this guy's playing. He wants to make me get angry. He wants me to start cursing. He wants me to just, and I won't fall for that game. And you were that was well played, smart. Because I remember I remember you had a Google Hangout. Your throat was killing you. And he made it seem like you were yelling, but you weren't yelling. Your throat was messed up, and you were trying to talk. And
for those who don't know, I had this huge issue with laryngitis because I was at the Global Atheist Convention in Melbourne, Australia, and the Christians had come out to protest the event, and they brought a bullhorn, and they were spouting all this nonsense over the bullhorn. And so I started yelling to try to be louder than their bullhorn.
Yes,
and I held that for quite a while, but then, of course, just completely blew my voice out.
Yeah, you did a number on that, and I wish you didn't do that Google Hangout, because you looked like you were absolutely destroying your vocal cords. But it was hard. It was kind of like him and Eric kind of knew, let's just make him talk more. His voice is hurting. Let's just keep fucking with him, I just find them very dishonest people. Like when I find out how much an Eric Hovind is worth, his dad, doctor, is it doctor or is it just dork?
As the man appears not to have he certainly does not have an actual PhD.
No,
I do not think that he has a master's degree. I don't think he has a bachelor's.
But doesn't that amaze you to sit there and say, if I was a dishonest person, I could make a fortune?
Yep.
It really, that's what bothers me. I mean, I look in the mirror and I go, why don't you be a jerk today and make a fortune? I mean, it works for these guys. Just lie out of your ass. I think Eric knows his dad's full of shit, but he wants the family business to keep flourishing. So he's going to keep, the same nonsense his dad spouted about the Earth being 5,000 years old. I mean, the thing that amazes me is even when I was a kid, I knew the planet wasn't 5,000 years old. Anybody who thinks the planet is 5,000 years old, you terrify me. How would you, 5,000 years old is a blink of an eye, Hitchens has that great saying, they believe that, men were on the planet. I'll give you 100,000 years, which, yes, for sure. 100,000 years, it's a pain and suffering that they went through. And then all of a sudden, what was it, 3,000 years ago, God said, enough of that. Enough of the pain and suffering. I'll show up in the middle of buttfuck nowhere and start talking about the Sky Father that's going to save us all, that cares about you.
I will relay this information only to questionable people with minimal literacy.
Yes.
I will have the books written about me won't be direct from me. There'll be interpretations written by other people in other languages, and all of which will be decades after the fact.
Yes.
And I won't have the intelligence or presence of mind to either write anything myself or put down evidence to indicate exactly what it is I want people to know.
Yes. And that, how do you not question that? How do you not, there's so many religions out there, and there's so many, how do I, that's what I felt. I wish, like a Matt Slick or any of these guys, why do I need you to tell me what it says in this book? Why can't I just pick up the book and figure it out on my own? I don't need you, because if I needed you, I would fucking hang myself. Okay? It's the truth. I could not deal just looking at you, let alone you speaking. So if I could pick up the book, if the book is all knowing and tells you how to have sex and do all this shit, what do I need you for? To tell me?
Yeah, because you have to interpret it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, you need me to interpret for you. And if I don't respect you, why would I listen to anything you have to say? If you watch a Matt Slick conversation with people, it's very hard to respect that person.
There was a lot of people that didn't appreciate that conversation, and I've read some of the comments that they didn't understand where I was coming from on that. That's fine. I obviously got a lot better review on the Bob Dutko and the other conference, the Sye Ten and Ray Comfort and all of those.
Well, I think his game was what he does is very dishonest. He'll watch a Bob Dutko. He'll watch you speak with the debates that you've had, and then he realizes what you're going to say. And because I remember him saying, Aron, how did you know I was going to say that? You don't know I was going to say that. You have faith. And he knew by saying that to you, by saying, you have faith in that, don't you? He knew that it was like this red flag that would get you angry to say, and he did it about 15 times to you. And it was on purpose, and he knew that the whole point was to just make you angry. And I knew exactly, because you were being as nice as possible. If you watch, and I watched it today, if you watch the first 10 minutes, you're actually in a great mood. You've actually, you're trying to explain it nice, calmly, taking your time, and he was purposely railroading the conversation by pretending to be stupid, by being ignorant, and rude. And you could only take so much of that. Yeah. So... and
of course, that was Matt Slick's game, too.
Yes.
You do the false equivalence where you say that science is based on faith.
Yeah. Well, remember he said, how do you know... He said something about, how do you know about... Like
I told him, I predicted what he would do. Whenever
yes.
I get into an argument with apologists, they always do this thing where, their position is so unsupported that the only way that they can be right is if reality is wrong. So
yes.
You're going to call reality into question, that somehow reality isn't real.
I believe in reality. I believe in reality. Remember, he just kept yelling that. I believe in. How do you not know that I agree with you. I totally believe in reality. But a second ago, you weren't. It was this.
Then what he said right after that was, how do I know?
Right.
He said that you can't even prove that you existed 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And because you could have been invented today and been filled with all these false memories. Well, if it's false memories, if my entire past is false memories, then that is reality being wrong.
Right.
And that was what I predicted he would do.
Yes. No, I remember that, and it was very. Anyone that's out there, please watch it. It is mind blowing how, if you ever want to act like a child or just derail a conversation, watch that, and you'll learn how liars work. And to me, it just seemed like he was a very dishonest liar. That's all. That's all I got out of that conversation. It
doesn't help. It doesn't help when you negotiate the definitions before the debate either. Because
yeah, but you don't even. I don't think you had to. I think that was his game. That's his game. If you ever watch other conversations he has with other people, he will. You need to stop and listen to it. Actually, pause it and listen to it, because he does lie through it. He'll say, "You said this" when you didn't. Or one word. He'll pick out one word you said. And holy fuck, it is painful. It is painful to have a conversation with that guy. Again,
and one of the other tactics is to always avoid the burden of proof.
Right.
And that's why, they need to redefine atheism so that atheism becomes a positive belief somehow. And they need to change the rules about proving a negative.
Right.
So that if you don't believe in God, well, what's your evidence that God doesn't exist? That doesn't work that way. But they have to make it work that way, because they can't bear the burden of proof on anything ever.
Yeah. Well, they change the argument to suit them, but they're taking our worldview.
And then accusing us of taking theirs.
Yes, and that is so dishonest. And that is very frustrating when you're watching this. You're just sitting there going, this is a really sick game that they're playing. I remember when he would always, he would say scripture to you like it meant something, and then you said, well, we knew of when Caesar ruled the earth. I mean, there were gold coins, writers about him, that they could go back. Archaeology can go back. With Jesus, Jesus didn't even have that. There's nothing. It's just through Scripture. There are no gold coins. There's nothing. The only thing that we have is a Bible that was written not by Matthew, Mark, or Luke, or John, but written by Mo, Larry, and Curly in Greece. And that's all you have, and you keep going back to that Scripture like it means something. And when you realize that the people that wrote it were paid to write this, it really means nothing, I mean, if you're so hung up on God and you want to believe that there's a God, I believe if he was such a loving, caring God and knew how upsetting it was that you didn't know he was around, he'd come and talk to you. He wouldn't go through a Matt Slick or any of these people. He'd show up and tell you, hey, I'm sorry about the way things are, or whatever. Hey,
well, if God is infallible and all wise, then he wouldn't have chosen any of the emissaries who claim to be representing him now.
Right. Yes, because that's the thing. If there was I was always told that life is a test. That's all it is. At the end of it, at the end of life, God will, he'll do judgment on you to see if you were good or bad. And what I notice when people do good things, they're trying to buy their way into heaven, And I'm thinking, why not just do good for good's sakes? Why do you got to do good to say, this is what, the Bible commands? Well, no, don't. If I was a God, I'd be happy if you just did it just because it was the right thing to do, not because I told you to do it.
And I've heard Christians say that once they're saved, then they're always saved, and it doesn't matter what they do. They can just continually keep asking for forgiveness, so they can continue to keep sinning.
Well, it's the Catholics have the confessional, right? So what you do is you could be as bad as you want, and then that's why a lot of 80s, in the 70s and 80s, a lot of the porn stars, the girls were Catholic, because they could easily go and do what they needed to do. And that's true, because a lot of the male stars were Jewish, and they always said they'd always, their co-star, the girl, was always a Catholic. And to me, that's where the best place to pick up women was church.
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, I had a Catholic girlfriend, and good times.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Because confession would come and everything would be okay. And when you'd watch this and you'd step back, you'd realize how fucked up that was. How that's not the way to do business. If you think that's the way, if you think that you can get away with bad things, and think that I just need to go tell it to another man who dresses up in a robe and doesn't have sex with women about it, and he'll tell me, I remember my first confession. It was the weirdest thing in the world. You're as nervous as it's like fucking going to the army. You are as nervous. You're in a lineup. You're a little kid, and you're sitting there. I remember I was about 9 years old, and I kept thinking, what did I do so bad? What did I didn't do my homework? Well, okay, I'll tell him I didn't do my homework. And the kid in front of me, all I heard was the priest go, "You did what? Come." Yeah, I swear to you. And he comes out, opens up the curtain, grabs the kid, and by his ear brings him to the front of the church, sets him down, starts screaming at him to do about 19 Hail Marys, and I literally shit myself. And I was next. I got in there, and you got to do the father son, and it's been this is my first confession. And he said, "Do you have anything to confess?" And I said, "I don't know," And he said, "There must be something. There must be something." And I said, I swore at my grandmother, which I didn't, And he said, "Okay, there'll be 6 Hail Marys and 7 Our Fathers, and everything will be fine." And I went to the front of the church, sat down, and pretended to, because I didn't know how to say the prayer, so I just mumble, like, move my lips and time it. I would say an Our Father is maybe 2 minutes, so I'd kind of time an I Father or whatever. I mean, it was pathetic. It was just pathetic back then, like what people had to do, in this day and age. Oh, God, swearing at your grandmother or what the kids do now is absolutely nothing. But church terrified me when I was a kid.
I fortunately didn't have a lot of experience at church.
Oh, you were lucky.
Yeah. The one time I remember being in a church, I remember telling my grandmother that the guy behind the podium was lying. And she slugged me in the stomach.
Oh.
Because you don't ever question the guy on the podium.
Yes. And I remember one of I remember you talking about when you were younger, you read the Bible, and you read the whole thing, and you threw it across the room saying, "That is a bad book."
Yeah, I didn't read the whole thing yet. I did not make it. I didn't make it much past Genesis by that point.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't wait till you read the whole thing and then throw it.
Right.
You throw it when you realize you've been duped. When you were told that this was going to be the Word of God, that by reading this you're going to get divine wisdom.
Right, and and that's the thing that I've read it twice, and I'm dyslexic, severely dyslexic. So it takes me a while to read things, but once I read them, I know them. And it took me a while to read it. Halfway through, I would stop and say, "This is bullshit." Like I would literally stop and just go, "This is like, who believes this?" And I talked to a priest about this, saying, I really don't believe this shit. I didn't say it like that, but he kind of saw it in my eyes that I just don't believe it. And he just said, everybody goes through rough times. And I'm like, I've had a rough time for 45 years there, Father. I'm just not buying it. My child, during the summer, I would listen to your talks, or I'd listen to The Thinking Atheist, and my kids would see that I'd be listening to this. And my daughter, at the time, she was 9, she's like, "Dad, do you not believe in God?" And because all of her friends, of course, they all go to church, and and she doesn't. But she asked me, she goes, Dad, do you not believe in God? And I said, no, but I believe in you, And she just kind of looked at me and just thought, well, I believe in him. And I said, okay, sweetie, but I just don't see it, And then later on in the car, a couple of trips, she would ask me about it. And I would kind of explain to her about, she would say, who's Jesus? And I would explain who they believe Jesus was and what Catholics believe and maybe there wasn't even a Jesus, because it was such an old story. I mean, I think that Jesus, I kind of explained it to her that I think Jesus was this guy that, he was, back then there were several little cults, and, the Jesus of today would have, if he was alive, he would have freaked out to say, I can't believe the people bought this shit, I mean, I'm sure he was in a little cult, and which grew and grew and grew, and that's it.
I'm not convinced that there was an actual Jesus that any time traveler would be able to recognize as being the guy.
That's what I wanted to ask you. If you had a time machine and you could only use it once, what would you do? Now, remember, you could see relatives, you could go you got 5,000 years, you can go wherever you want. Where would you go?
I would probably want to see the Permian.
The Permian? What's that?
It's the era that you still had trilobites. It was before the Permian extinction, and when the largest predator in North America was Dimetrodon.
Oh, fuck, you'd go all the way there. That'd be awesome, eh? As soon as you get out, you get eaten. Hey, that's awesome. Ow! I would go back. I would like to go to the crucifixion to see if it actually took place. When they say he was walking and being, like when the guy tried to help him with the cross. I would like to be there and just if they asked me if I was going to help them, I'd go, fuck no. Are you kidding? It's not my problem, But I would love to be there just to see if it actually happened.
My contention is that if you had a time machine and you could go back and you could look for Jesus, you'd have clues for when to look and you have clues for where to look.
Right.
But they contradict each other, so you never actually know if you're in the right place at the right time.
And that's what bothers me, as if you were a person that studied the Bible, if you were a person like a Slick or, that does this for a living, wouldn't that, if you're a mechanic, you better know your car, right? You better know how to fix cars. If you study the Bible, fuck, there's so many contradictions, so many, were the women present when the rock was moved? Was there a boulder? Was he crucified? Was he not crucified? I've seen a show where they showed that crucifixion was actually a cross, like a X, because the trees weren't big enough. There was no way it was a cross. That's what they were saying. Yesterday they were showing Noah's Ark, and they said maybe it was round. They like this big round fucking donut kind of thing. And, the biggest they could have got this thing was 35 feet. So maybe 3 elephants could have fit in it. 3 elephants and a carrot, could have fit in this thing. And that's using modern technology. So, when that's the thing. When you look at it and you sit there and go, I'm a grown up. I love cryptozoology. We also do shows about that because I don't believe in Bigfoot or anything, but I really think people see things like, if they see a bear, they misinterpret that. I know there's no Nessie, but everybody loves a great story. And I think these are stories that, somebody wrote, paid for, write them down, and, over the years, they've become this, turned into the Catholic, the Protestant, Baptist, you name it. There's so many denominations. that you have to look at it and say, if it was the right book, if it really did happen, there would be one religion and everybody would follow it. You know, it wouldn't be, you know, I could go down my street and there's 4 different churches.
Yeah. Yeah, and there seems to be one on every corner here, too.
And they all believe different things. They all believe, sure, they believe in a God, but they also, it's a different kind of belief, the things they do. You know, everybody says, well, you know, there's, you know, at least there's that one way to God. They all point the same direction. And I'm thinking, no, they don't. They don't, because they say either you follow mine or you're wrong.
That's right.
And you got to admit, that is messed up. That is not the way a creator would want things to, you know, a business. This is you know, he'd have a failing business right now. You know, the business is failing. And you got, you know, like if you watch shows like The Bible, Wingnut, if you watch those guys, they are, to me, sick people. I mean, to sit back and to think, like if you were a guest, they would belittle you, be rude to you, tell you were wrong and you were evil. And when you were off, they would laugh about you. And I'm thinking, that is pure evil, man. You're sick. Like, if you know, you have a Matt Slick who doesn't talk to his daughter anymore. If I couldn't talk to my daughter, I would lose my mind. Okay? If a book told me that, you know, she's, you know, that I've got to follow a book or follow my daughter, and I choose the book, you are a fucking idiot. Okay?
Why doesn't he talk to his daughter?
I've heard she's an atheist.
So he won't talk to her.
No, he said he wrote her a letter, you know, that, you know, he you know, that's what you do. A child that you've made, that you've brought up, you instead of going and grabbing them, driving in your car, finding them, telling them that, you know, when you find them, you hug them, you tell them, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. Hey, we may not agree with everything. Listen, I you know, I think the Bible says this, but you know what? You don't believe it, but you're my daughter and I love you and I care for you and I want you to be home with me, or, you know, I want to have a relationship with you. Me cutting you off and not talking to you because I think you're evil, because you're an atheist, you're sick, man. You're a very sick person.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And it's a really sad thing. I mean, people in my own family have told me that, you know, that religion requires that you put your faith ahead of your own family. And I remember being a very little boy and saying, no, that's wrong.
Yes. And that, I mean, do you believe if there wasn't, what would you think if there wasn't a religion? There was no religion. What would you think? Like, do you think the world would be better or worse?
Well, of course it would be better. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to be a rational person, but at least they're not paying 10% of their earnings to somebody else to be super rich. And if you notice how these churches work, I mean, you have one guy who's really super mega rich, and he's being supported by a very poor, you know, huge neighborhood. And even in the neighborhoods that are, you know, that are affluent, well, then in that case, if you've got people that are you know, upper middle class, well, then their minister is the one who has a multi-million-dollar estate and a helicopter to work.
Right.
So that's the way that works. I'm going to have to go.
Okay.
Sorry that,
I really appreciate your time. I know it took us a while to get going with the sound issues, but you are a gentleman and a scholar, and I look up to you. I appreciate the time. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking to Mr. Aron Ra. He was sweet enough to give us a Christmas present early here on the Wrecking Crew comedy podcast. He is the Texas State Director at American Atheist, host of the Rahman podcast, public speaker, video blogger, producer, please check out his work. You'll absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Aron Ra.
Right.
You're a joy to talk to, and it means the world to me.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'll talk to you soon, and have a Merry Christmas, sir.